Hey guys, welcome to the FitTown Show. I'm Coach Andrew, joined today by Coach Austin, and we're going to be trying out a new segment today with our coaches. Coach Austin's going to be the first one, and that segment's going to be the 5 books that changed my life. So we're going to be talking about the 5 books that have had the most positive impact on Austin's life. Maybe a negative impact. Maybe it changed it for the worse. That would be a book you don't want to read if it changed it for the negative. But hopefully these are going to be 5 positive. So are these in any particular order, like good to bad, or?
I actually did put them in order from most influential to me, and actually the ones I've reread the most. So
okay.
Yes, I do have them in order.
You have kind of like a superlative category of each one has its read the most times or most impact.
Yeah, keep a tally in Excel.
Okay, so. Cool. All right, so kick it off. What's your first book that's had the most impact on your life?
All right, my first book is called Soup.
Soup?
It's literally called Soup.
Is it a recipe book? Or?
It is. It's Soup. It's a recipe to nourish your team and culture.
Okay.
It's by John Gordon, and before I get into that in particular book, really any John Gordon book I would highly recommend to anyone. If you are someone who doesn't enjoy reading, I would even more highly recommend John Gordon books because they're all 120 pages, super easy read, and he usually tweaks them in a way that makes them entertaining. Yeah,
they're usually stories about almost like a fiction book, but with nonfiction principles.
Yeah, and this is no different. This is the same exact thing. And yeah, he works with a lot of professional sports teams like the Dodgers, the Heat, things like that. So yeah, I would recommend any of his books. But this particular one I was given at a different job that I had previously that was required reading. And since I read it that first week I was on the job, I think I've probably read it 3 or 4 more times. And nice. I also bought the podcast or the Audible about 4 months ago and re-listened to it again on Audible. So this is my number one. It's probably not even close, but the book in general is basically showing what you put into something is the results you're going to get from it. So if you're looking for positivity in the workplace, you need to put positivity out there. If you're looking for a really molded team culture, you need to prove that in the actions that you take. So I don't know how many details you want me to give in the book without giving it away or ruining any of the fun, but
How did that book impact you then, and how does it continue to impact you today?
So the biggest thing was the very first fitness job I had, there wasn't a culture. It was I show up to coach the 5, 6, 7, I'm completely by myself, I never even see the next coach. So it's very individual. When Danielle and I opened our affiliate, it was the same way. It was just her and I, and then later on we had one team member, but still that was more like a friend, not a team, if that makes sense. So when I went to the job that ended up giving me this book, it was, you're going to be on a team, you need to now understand how to function in the team and how to make that team better. And prior to that, besides being on sports teams growing up, I had never been in a team in a workplace, and it's a lot different. It takes a lot different skill set. It also takes a lot different, I would say almost patience from your end, because you, mostly from my standpoint, when I've done something my way, like owning our own gym, and then you have to go work with others, it's very easy to get frustrated. Whereas you have to take into account what they're feeling, what they're thinking. Their thoughts matter just as much as yours, and their thoughts may actually be better than yours in any given situation, and kind of how to deal with those. Yeah. So.
Cool. Who do you think is a really good fit for this book? Who would pick that up?
I like it so much I would recommend it to everyone, but if I had to pick a niche of people, I would say if you are on any team, and I mean ideally in your career, I would recommend this. If you're the leader of said team, you have to read it. So if you're on a team, I would recommend it. If you're a leader, it's a must for me from books. Yeah. So
okay, what change? How did it change or what was the biggest thing that, besides the patience, what's something else that you had to implement from the book that made you a better team player?
I would say a good word is empathy for others. Patience and those kind of things, they all kind of mold together, but just really being empathetic to what others are thinking and feeling in any given situation. Because like I said, it's really easy to think your feelings are the only ones that matter, and if you're on a team, that's just not the case.
Yeah.
So if I had to just pinpoint into one word, it would be, yeah.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Let's move on. What's number 2?
So this was by far my most recommended book for anyone. This is The Power of Nice by Linda Kaplan Thaler and then Robin Covell. Hope I pronounce those correctly. But this one is, to answer your question that's coming, if you're a human, you should read this book. So
I did read this book. It's
did
a good
you?
book. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. And what is, like, I mean, it seems like it's in the title. Why do I even have to read the book? I mean, I should be more nice to people, right? Like, what's the big takeaway beyond that?
So the book, I will say that this book in particular is molded in a business fashion. So you kind of have to take that with a grain of salt. You can, take out what you need as an individual, but just going and reading it, it is about running a business and how to run a successful business, being the nice guy. And I think the biggest takeaway is, as a society, we're in this like dog eat dog world almost of like, there's a Gary Vee quote that I love. It's like, there's 2 ways to build the biggest building in town. It's like you can tear others down, or you can just build the biggest building.
Yeah.
And I think this book kind of goes along the same lines of that. Like, you don't have to be the jerk to win, right? Where sometimes in society, like, people see like CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, and that sometimes they are not nice people, but you can get to that point. You can become successful, whatever that means to you, being the nice guy. And they give a ton of examples of how being nice has in return given them 10x of what they expected. So one of the notes I put was, it allows you to create opportunities. So if you are looking for opportunities, if you're looking to take a step in anywhere in life, like, you never know what one little ounce of kindness could now come back and affect you in some other way. I think one example they gave was, this lady was working on an internship and she said something nice to like one of the like assistant teachers or something like that, and then like 10 years later he was the person hiring for said job. And
I remember that story.
So and then she ended up getting the position because he remembered whatever she had done that was like so like over the top kind to him. So it's just like, it's examples like that, but it's something that I think we brush over as a society now of like, you can be nice like all the time.
I think especially with more on the male side in business, you have those questions of like, you see successful people like a Steve Jobs, and from the stories you hear, like, he's a visionary, but you also hear that he's very much an asshole as well. So you think, okay, well, does one have to come with the other? Or maybe in sports, you were around people that were really good athletes, but they didn't care about their teammates and they didn't support their teammates. So it's like, okay, are those traits exclusive of each other, or do they run along the same path? And I agree with you that this book does a good job of not only showing you that they don't have to go together, but you actually can go further while being a better person and being nicer along the way. Can you think of any specific instances that that's really played a part in your personal life or business life where it's change in action for you, or something that you would have approached differently with this mindset?
I think it just makes you in any given situation like take a second. And I know I'll get into it later with another book, but something I've struggled with is like taking in a situation and then giving the right output, I guess is how I say that. But this book, after you read it, it's like you don't have to react in any way besides nice. There's like literally no situation that you have to act in anger or act out of rudeness, or in any given situation, even if they're being rude to you, you being nice to them is actually more of a slap in the face of them than anything. So it's like, why not just always be the bigger, nicer person in the situation? So if I had to give I would just say anytime that I'm put in a position where I have the opportunity to be rude, I try not to take that route. So
okay, cool. Number 3, give us book number 3.
So we actually read this one as a book club, but I had read it previously in life. But it's Chop Wood, Carry Water by Joshua Metcalf. I don't remember how long ago we read that in book club, but I read it then, and I also had read it previously in life.
Yeah, it's a really easy read.
Very, yeah.
The chapters are like 4 or 5 pages each, right?
Yeah.
And each one has a good lesson, and I would say it's a similar setup to John Gordon's books.
Yeah,
where it's these stories. In this case, with Chop Wood, Carry Water, I know it's like a archery. I forget I guess the Japanese term for it, but he's learning archery in Japan, I believe, and it's all the lessons that come with that.
Yeah, and he has the sensei guy who's like telling him like over and over again to do this annoying task. I don't exactly remember what the task was, but every day it's like the same thing, drilling, and he's like getting very frustrated in the situation, and like, I just want to be a master at whatever it was, the archery or whatever. And the sensei is like, if you want to be a master, like, this is what it takes.
Yeah.
And the big thing for me, and funny, I said a Gary Vee quote earlier just out of the blue, but this one I actually wrote down a Gary Vee quote because of this book, which is macro patience, micro speed.
Yeah.
That's what made me think of when I thought of this book is, if anything, it's taught me to be very patient in trying to become better than I currently am. But in saying that, you have to continually take steps every single day. So yes, it's going to take some time, and yes, you have to be patient, which they lay out in the book with him in this archery thing, but you can't just assume you're going to get better at it by not doing it. Yeah. So if I'm wanting to become a better coach, like, I have to be on the floor actively trying to become a better coach every single day. If I'm just like flying by, like, I'm just going to be where I am right now 2 years from now. So yeah, if anything, it's taught me you have to understand that it takes patience, but at the same time you have to act.
Yeah, it's like your actions should have urgency, but your attachment to the result of those actions should be like so patient, right? Yeah. I think one of the examples in the book, I believe, is when he first gets into like this archery program and he's working with the sensei, he's asking him how long it's going to take before he's like a master archer.
Yeah.
I believe the timeline is 20 years. And then he's like, well, what if I work twice as hard? And the sensei's like 30 years then, because they're already working hard. Like, they already work really hard. For him to work more than that is unnecessary, and it's just going to essentially screw up his mindset, which is he wants this urgent result, and until he drops that mindset and just trusts the process, he's going to just extend his timeline.
Yep. And I think for someone who this book would be very beneficial to is, so I looked at it for me in the sense of getting better in my career.
Yeah.
But I think this will be, which is very beneficial if you guys feel that way, but I think this is very beneficial for our athletes who go to the gym, who struggle with the process. And more importantly, to people who've been doing this for 5 to 7 years, who are in that point where it's like, I'm not PRing every day, I'm not this, I'm not that, etc. The things that we hear a lot, but it's like, have you been doing everything necessary in the daily classes to get you to a PR point right now? So when we do snatch warm-ups, are you hitting each snatch with purpose, or are you just doing it to warm up, right? So I would recommend it to anyone who feels like they're in a slump in that standpoint as an athlete. But then again, if there's anyone in business who's wanting to continually get better or in life, this will teach you some good lessons. Yeah,
I was going to say anybody that's been doing this like 2 years or more, it can be especially true. Or someone who's just starting, who's just like has that mindset of like, I'm going to come 7 days a week. I could see that person doing really, really well with it. Yeah. So I love that example. Cool. Anything else on that book?
No, I don't think so.
All right. What's number 4?
So I have Grit to Great. I actually bought this Audible on accident because I was trying to buy The Power of Nice. So Grit to Great is also by Linda Kaplan Thaler and Robin Covell. Did not mean to buy it. Thought I was buying a different book. Ended up, after I listened to The Power of Nice, I was like, well, I bought it. I might as well just give it a go. And it was just right below The Power of Nice in my eyes. So.
And what's this one about?
This one is about if. So I think it's very necessary of where we currently are in the world anyway. It talks about like you have to understand that no one is going to start the race at the same starting line. So, and by starting line and race, they're talking about success. So all their books are business based. So they're talking about like if you were born in a poverty-stricken area and you want to be a Fortune 500 CEO, obviously it's going to take a little bit more work and grit and effort than someone who, you know, had a hedge fund growing up that was kind of given more opportunities.
Yeah.
However, you're still in the race. You're still in the same race. You still have the same opportunity to win, right? You just have some more obstacles to overcome. So the biggest lesson is just understanding that getting to great is an obstacle course, and it's going to take grit to get over said obstacles, and everyone's set up in a different scenario. You just can't let those obstacles be anything that stops you from going where you want to go, I guess.
Sounds like it's teaching people to stay in their lane in that sense and focus on what's in front of them rather than trying to see someone else's situation as better or worse than theirs.
Exactly. And it's also trying to teach you, like, you are going to run into a situation that is extremely difficult to overcome. Mm-hmm. And if you really want to become great, or you really want to become the CEO of Google or whatever, like, you're going to have to figure out how to get around the obstacle or overcome the obstacle to do it. And just expect road bumps. There's going to be many, many road bumps. And they give, just like in their first book, they give a ton of practical examples of how that kind of plays out. They gave examples of them two as authors. I don't remember their exact story, but I remember it was pretty inspirational of like what they went through. I think Linda, and she might have had like the really crazy story of like how she even became an author. But I really enjoyed reading that. It's very motivational. Like, I usually don't get motivated by books and things like that. I feel like I have like a natural motivation, but that one like kind of pumped me up a little bit, which is, you know.
Do you feel like that helped you like retrospectively to look at like, okay, I had these situations growing up and it's time for me to get past that, or like forward facing where you're like, okay, this is this upcoming thing that is standing in my way, but I can overcome it?
Yeah, I think it was your first point. And it's because I did come from a very, like, I wouldn't say hard situation, because I know what some people have come through, but it wasn't the best. And I always had the mindset as a kid, like, I'm not going to let this stop me. But you get to a point as an adult, things do start happening, you're like, oh my gosh, like, I'm so far behind on XXX compared to whoever, and you do start comparing. And we're in this, like, weird, like, media-driven world, or like Instagram famous world, where you are comparing, which is like, it's horrible, but it's pretty natural in today's world to do. It's a book that makes you like stop and realize, like, I don't need to do that. I'm on a perfect path for where I need to go. I just need to continue going on it.
Cool. Who do you think is a good fit for this type of book?
I hesitate to say everyone, because I don't think everyone needs to read it. Out of all the books, this is the one I don't think everyone needs to read. But if you feel like you are struggling, if you just feel like you're in a difficult spot in life, or in your career you feel like you're kind of stuck, like you've been in the same situation, you don't feel like you can kind of break through, I would recommend it.
Sounds like also someone that had what they would consider a difficult upbringing, or something that they faced.
Yeah,
trauma.
and I think there's, in going to like a situation like that, I think there's probably better ways you can like approach like a past thing, but this does help bring the conversation, or bring that back up into your head, so you can actually think about it and kind of dissect it as you need. Mm-hmm. I think those kind of people would be great for this.
Cool. What's the fifth and final book?
So this is actually my most, well, I don't want to say most recent, because I did start another one a couple days ago, but this is one of my most recent books. This is the Dichotomy of Leadership by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. So this is actually the second book to
Extreme Ownership.
Extreme Ownership, yes. So Extreme Ownership was the first one. I liked Extreme Ownership. I felt like there was something missing to it. I didn't know what it was. And when I read this book, everything made complete sense to me. And where I'm currently at in career and life, I think this will end up having one of the bigger impacts on me. I don't want to say it has yet, because I don't feel like I've taken enough action to let it do that yet, but I feel like eventually it will. So, that's the last one. This is the fifth book.
Okay. Give us some more info on what this book is about. Like what landed with you, and what did you like about the book?
Yeah. So the first book, Extreme Ownership, was essentially, so they give like real military examples so they both went to war.
The format are both books formatted the same way. I believe it's a chapter about a military situation, and then a chapter about a business situation.
Yep, it's the exact same way. So both books are the same way. So they give like their real life battleground situation, and then they actually now run a business that helps other businesses develop leadership. Set up the exact same way. The first book left me feeling like exactly how I already felt, which was, if something is going wrong, it's my fault and I should just be the one to fix it. And I was already that type of person. I'm already like, if they're not doing well enough, I'll just do it. Like, I was never like, hey, maybe you should try this. I was just like, forget it, I'll do it.
Yeah.
You can only do that for so long. When you start taking on more and more jobs, you have to start relying on your team members to also perform their jobs. So I left that book of I was right. Like, it's all on my plate, right? Now I have even more on my plate. And I still liked the book. I would still recommend that book. But this book took a step further, and they actually said, like, in the first, I think, like, the introduction of the book, they said that they messed up releasing Extreme Ownership. Like, they said, we messed up. Like, the Extreme Ownership wasn't the best book we could have put out because it left a huge hole, and we hope this book fills it. And I think it did, and it did, like, very well. So this book is essentially the same thing. It says you need to take extreme ownership. However, you have to rely on those around you to also take extreme ownership of whatever their jobs are. And they give examples of that, crazy examples of that in war. But more importantly, they give examples of it in real life business with real life people that kind of bring it back to earth for us, because the war is like, it's fun to listen. I don't want to say fun, that's probably not a good word to describe war, but
it's very engaging.
It's very engaging and it gets your attention. But it's hard for me to understand bullets going by my head.
Right.
You know? So when I understand him talking to a company, it makes a ton more sense to me because I've dealt with that.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it personally helped because, like I said, I felt like it was my responsibility to make everything perfect, even though we have people on the team with the job to do what I think I need to do, even though I don't, you know?
Yeah.
I take the responsibility when there's nothing needed of me to do. That doesn't mean you can't hold your team members to doing it to a very high standard. I think all companies should do that. Yeah. I think everyone should hold their team to the highest of standards, mostly if you guys want to continue getting better. But at the end of the day, you have to separate yourself and allow yourself to separate and allow them to do their job. And understand, like, I think I brought it up when we were talking about soup, like, there may be people who do things different than you, and you have to be empathetic to that. Yeah. Like, you have to let them go out on their own, in a certain sense, to figure it out, I guess is the right word, so that they can continue growing, but also the team can continue growing because you can focus on what you need to focus on. As soon as you take your focus to help them, you're figuring about what you have to do in the first place.
Yeah.
And I think I always do a lot of that. So I don't want to say I've gotten better at it yet, but that's my goal personally. Is I know the team that we have and I know how good we can be, mostly if we're all doing exactly what we know we should do. And if we're just holding each other to those standards, like, who knows, like, where we'll go.
Yeah, I'll let you answer this question as well, but when I think about who could benefit from that book, I think anybody who's being pulled into the current state of media right now, whether that be COVID, the racial unrest, everything that's going on, the political stuff that's going on, this is a great book because it allows you to hold this dichotomy and not get to one side or the other, right? And a lot of the truth is in the middle, and you have to be able to, what I've learned with this stuff is you have to be able to fully embody both sides to actually be able to comfortably sit in the middle. So you have to have those moments where you say, I'm going to throw the team on my back and do everything and anything and everything. And then you have to have those moments where it's like, what if I didn't do any of that and I completely let this person take the reins? What would that look like? And that's true for many aspects of leadership. It's true for many aspects of relationships. And that ability to hold that dichotomy of these both ends of the spectrum is really important, as opposed to being dragged one way or the other to like responsibility versus like I would say complacency, or just like for just allowing whatever the result is kind of a thing. Surrender.
Yeah, I really like that. So I actually think I went in a different direction of like who it should be used for. I love yours. I actually put, if you're someone like me who is extremely like OCD on things. So like I say OCD, I'm not diagnosed with OCD or anything like that, but I love things being in a particular way. And if like you say this is how it should be done, to me, like there is no other way. Like that is the way, you know? And that's something I struggle with. And I think that's I struggle to say the word immature, but it is that way of thinking almost. And not in every situation. Like if you have a job and it needs to be done this way, like you should of course strive to get it done that way to the best of the ability. However, they give perfect examples of like they have standing operating procedures in war, and there's times that they need to not follow those to save their lives. So like I said, that's very drastic compared to what we would deal with on a daily life. But at the same time, like you have to understand sometimes you have to go down a different road. And ideally the roads are all going to meet back up at some time. But for someone like me, like that's really hard for me to like let go, because I'm like, oh my gosh, like what if it doesn't? What if we don't come back? Like what if they end up in Mississippi and we're in like New York? Like that's where I start going and thinking in my head. So for me, it's like stepping back, trying to take a deep breath, figure out like what the big picture is. Is it really this important? Like, is it going to do something so bad that I'm not going to be able to like function anymore, you know? And then from that point, then making a decision like, should I let it go? Should I step in? Where do I fit into this? Do I even fit in? So,
I want to step back to something you made, which is this idea of taking responsibility. And it sounds like you read Extreme Ownership and just further this idea that it's all my fault. Right? And then the flip side of that is it's all their fault, right? And there's this really cool model that you guys could actually research. There's a 2-minute video on YouTube called the victim triangle that talks about like victim, hero, and villain. And basically when you don't want to be in the triangle at all, because you're all promoting this idea of someone as a victim. And when you're playing the role of hero, that's you saying this is all my fault. When you're playing the role of villain, you're saying this is all their fault. And then when you're playing the victim, it's why is this happening to me? Why does this always happen to me? The goal is to step out of that triangle and to come from a place of abundance, and to really step into the role of the coach, which the coach doesn't make someone a victim, but they also don't say you're perfect as you are and there's nothing to improve upon. So when you're dealing with teams and as a leader, it's realizing that there's more to be done, there's more to be improved here, and I'm taking responsibility for the outcome, but it's not my fault in that sense. I'm not going to take it to that degree, but I am responsibility for creating the improvement, which is the role of the coach. But the person I'm working with, whether that be my employee, my athlete, they're even more responsible for their own result.
Couldn't have said it better.
Okay, cool. Anything you want to add on extreme ownership, or on a dichotomy of leadership?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think that's good.
Did you have anything else? Did you have any other books?
Those are it. I will say that I don't think they're the 5 best books I've ever read. I think they have had the biggest impact on my life. So I will take that however you guys want to look at that. I think if you if you really dig in and take action upon the books once you read them, you can get a lot out of them. If you're just going to read them for entertainment, I'm not sure exactly what you'll get besides a good book. But if you actually read one, take some time afterwards to think about it, maybe write some stuff down, and then like try to actually put together some actionable steps. I think they can be just as influential to you. So,
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Austin.
Yeah, of course.